Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Excited to be here.
Today we're looking at this article called Why Communication Matters for General Contractors.
Yes.
I think this is something that everyone who's ever worked on any type of project or renovation or even just like talking with a contractor has thought about.
Right.
Like, how do we make this process better?
Yeah.
But this article actually gives us some tips and strategies that we can put into action.
I think what's really cool about it is that it kind of goes beyond just those surface level tips. And it really digs into why communication is like the foundation of a successful contractor-client relationship.
Okay, I like that foundation.
Yeah.
So where do we start?
Well, it all starts with trust. And this article, it really emphasizes open communication as a way to build that trust from the very beginning.
So we're not just like sending random texts and emails hoping to the best.
No, not at all. We're talking about setting up clear channels from day one.
Oh, okay.
So things like, scheduling of those regular check-ins.
Like weekly progress reports or something.
Exactly. But it's also about thinking bigger than that.
Oh.
It's about consistent updates throughout the entire project.
Okay.
And it's not just about the frequency. It's also about making information super easy for the client to access.
So what does that look like?
Well, imagine if your client had like a portal where they could just log in and see every single update, every message, every change order, all in one place.
Oh my gosh, that would have been a lifesaver for my last kitchen remodel.
I know, right?
I was like digging through emails for days trying to find a final invoice.
I've been there.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, so this is where tools like a CRM can really come in handy.
CRM.
Yeah, CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management Software.
Okay.
And basically it's like the central hub for all of your communication.
Oh.
Like imagine having a super organized assistant.
Oh, I would love that.
Right, who keeps all of your communication perfectly organized.
I would pay a lot of money for that assistant.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so we've got the CRM keeping us organized.
Yes.
But what about the actual way we communicate?
Yeah.
What are some tips for actually being a good communicator?
Well, the article really emphasizes active listening.
Active listening.
And I know it sounds simple, right?
Yeah.
But it's about going beyond just hearing what your client is saying.
Okay.
It's about really understanding their vision, their concerns, their needs, and, sometimes even like those unspoken anxieties they might have about a project.
So you're like a contractor and a therapist all in one.
Exactly. You're really trying to read between the lines, asking those clarifying questions, and really making sure that you are on the same page.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
Well, even just a simple question like, can you tell me more about what you're hoping to achieve with the space? Can really unlock a whole new level of understanding.
Yeah, that shows that you care.
Yeah.
You're not just there to get the job done and get paid. Okay, so we're being all empathetic, we're asking the right questions, but sometimes things still get lost in translation.
Of course.
How do we avoid that?
That's where clear documentation comes in.
Okay.
Think of it as like the blueprint for your communication.
I like blueprints.
Me too.
So this is where those detailed proposals come in.
Exactly.
Formal contracts and regular progress reports.
Yes. All of those things are not just formalities. They're essential tools for preventing those misunderstandings down the line.
So it's like having that super detailed recipe.
Yes.
That keeps you from totally messing up the cake.
I love that analogy.
I love cake.
Me too.
Okay. But even with the best recipe and taste tests, sometimes things still go wrong in the kitchen.
It happens.
So how do we handle those inevitable project hiccups?
Proactive communication is key.
Okay.
The article really stresses addressing problems quickly and honestly.
Right, because no one likes surprises.
Especially not when it comes to their, home renovation or big project like that.
Right. I once had a contractor try to hide a plumbing issue from me.
Oh!
And it ended up costing me a fortune to fix later on.
Yeah. Transparency is key.
Yes. Definitely learned that the hard way.
So it's about building that trust through honesty, even when it's uncomfortable.
Right.
And when changes do happen, because they inevitably do, you need to formalize them.
Okay.
And that's where those change orders come in.
Change orders.
Yeah, those detailed documents that outline any changes to the scope of the work materials timeline, anything that changes.
So it's like an amendment to the contract.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
It keeps everyone on the same page.
Right.
And prevents those. Wait, I thought we agreed on X arguments later on?
Okay, so we've talked about open communication, active listening documentation.
Yeah.
What else is in this contractor communication toolkit?
Well, we can't ignore the elephant in the room technology.
Ooh, yes. The techie stuff.
I know you've been waiting for this.
I have. I feel like there's so many tools out there. it's hard to know where to even start.
It can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But the article makes a great point about using technology strategically to really streamline communication and boost your efficiency.
So it's not about adopting every shiny new app.
No, not at all.
It's about finding what actually works for you and your business.
Exactly. So, we talked about CRMs for centralizing communication.
Right.
But there are also project management tools that can help you track progress, manage tasks, keep everyone on schedule.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about those mobile apps,
Yeah.
for real-time updates and communication on the go.
Okay, so technology can actually be a good thing,
It can.
not just a distraction.
It's all about how you use it.
Okay, so how do we make sure we're not losing that personal touch?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it brings us to a really important point. The human element.
Ooh.
Technology should enhance communication, not replace it.
Uh-huh.
We're going to delve deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. Yes. I can't wait. But before we move on, let's recap what we've learned so far.
Okay.
So we talked about building trust through open communication.
Yes.
Setting up those clear channels from day one. Mastering the art of active listening.
It's an art.
And using documentation to keep everyone on the same page.
Exactly.
We also started to explore the power of technology.
Yes.
But remember, it's not about the tools themselves.
Right.
It's about how you use them to create that more efficient and transparent and ultimately human-centered communication experience.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's like we have all the ingredients for a delicious communication cake.
Okay, I'm listening.
Now we need to learn how to bake it to perfection.
I'm ready.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive into the art of using technology effectively and maintaining that all-important personal touch in a digital world.
Can't wait.
See you then.
Bye.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're talking all about how to use technology to make your communication even better as a contractor.
Yeah, it's really about striking that balance, right?
Between leveraging technology but not losing that personal touch.
It's like having your cake and eating it too.
Exactly. Because we all know how frustrating it can be to feel like you're just a number,
Right.
lost in a sea of automated messages and things like that.
Nobody wants that.
But when technology is used thoughtfully, it can actually really enhance those human connections.
Okay, so it's not about replacing those face-to-face interactions or those heartfelt phone calls.
Exactly. It's about using tech
Yeah.
to amplify those moments.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So what are some examples of doing that effectively?
Well, let's think about those weekly progress reports we talked about.
Yeah.
Instead of just sending, a dry email
Right.
with bullet points,
Yeah.
what if you use a project management tool that lets you share photos and videos
Ooh.
alongside those updates?
I like that.
So suddenly the client isn't just reading about progress.
Right.
They're seeing it come to life.
Yeah, it's like you're giving them a virtual
Oh, yeah.
tour of the project.
Yep.
And speaking of tours,
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of contractors use video conferencing now
Yeah.
for like virtual walkthroughs,
Ooh, that's cool.
which is great for keeping clients involved.
Especially if they can't be there in person.
Exactly, especially if they're busy or out of town.
Right.
That's a great way to keep them feeling in the loop.
And what about using video messaging?
Oh, yeah.
Just for those quick check-ins or if a client has a question?
It's so much more personal.
Right. It's not just text on a screen.
Exactly. It adds that human touch.
Have you seen contractors use social media to kind of share behind the scenes
Oh, absolutely.
glimpses of their projects?
Yeah, it's a great way to build excitement
Right.
and transparency.
Yeah, and it helps potential clients get to know you and your team.
Yeah, for sure. And it builds trust.
So we've talked a lot about communicating with clients.
Yes.
But what about internal communication
Ah, yeah.
with your team on the ground?
That's a whole other world.
Yeah, how can technology help with that?
Well, think about things like mobile apps.
Okay. That you can use to manage schedules, assign tasks, even track time and things like that.
Yeah, does that actually make a difference, though?
It can be huge,
Okay.
especially for those on-the-go moments, you know,
Right.
where you need to communicate something quickly or access information.
Yeah.
Imagine your crew member can instantly pull up the latest blueprints on their phone
Oh, that's handy.
or submit a material request without having to,
Right.
hunt down a paper form.
Yeah, that would save so much time.
Exactly. It streamlines everything.
It's like having a central command center
Yes.
in everyone's pocket.
I love it. But, with all this talk about efficiency
Yeah.
and streamlining,
Right.
how do we make sure we're not sacrificing quality
That's a good point.
or attention to detail?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's about the craftsmanship.
It is. And that's where you as the contractor, your skills as a communicator come in.
Yeah.
Technology is just a tool.
Right.
You're the one wielding it.
So it's about finding that balance.
Yes.
Exactly.
We talked earlier about how important clear documentation is
Yes.
for preventing those misunderstandings.
So important.
But how does that translate into a digital world?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because now, instead of relying on, stacks of paper contracts
Right.
and change orders,
Nobody wants that.
you can use digital signatures, cloud-based storage, project management software to keep everything organized and accessible.
So no more lost faxes.
Please no.
Or coffee-stained contracts.
I've seen it all.
That's the worst.
It's a nightmare.
And I imagine this also really helps with transparency,
Absolutely.
since everyone has access to the latest versions of everything.
Exactly. And you can track any changes that are made.
Right, and it creates that clear audit trail,
Yes.
which can be super valuable if there are any disputes.
It's so important.
Okay, so we're using technology to streamline our documentation.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, we can't forget about those old school communication skills.
Right. Those are still essential. Like clear speaking,
Yes.
active listening,
So important.
building genuine relationships.
It's all about the human connection.
So how do we stay sharp on those skills
That's a great question.
in a world that's so reliant on technology?
It's about continuous learning and development.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for a contractor who wants to be a master communicator?
Well, it's about staying curious, seeking out new information, and being willing to adapt
Right.
as the industry changes.
Because it's always changing.
It is. There are always new tools, new techniques.
Yeah.
There's so many resources available, workshops, online courses,
Yeah.
even podcasts like this one.
Hey, that's us. But it is a good reminder
It is.
that learning is a lifelong journey.
Absolutely, especially in a field like construction,
Right.
where things are constantly evolving.
Okay, but let's be real for a second.
Okay.
Sometimes even with the best communication strategies,
Yeah.
we're going to run into those tricky situations.
Difficult clients, unexpected delays,
Scope creep. Oh my gosh.
the dreaded scope creep.
Yes.
How do we navigate those choppy waters?
Well, that's where your communication skills are really put to the test.
Okay.
And it often comes down to a few key principles.
Okay, what are those?
Empathy, transparency, and a solution-oriented mindset.
I like those.
Those are your guiding lights.
Okay, those sound good in theory,
Yeah,
but how do we put them into action
right.
when we're in those high-pressure moments?
That's the real challenge.
So let's say you're dealing with a client who's unhappy about a delay.
Okay.
How would you approach that conversation?
Well, first and foremost, I would acknowledge their feelings and validate their frustration.
Okay,
It's important to remember
right.
that behind every complaint is a person who's probably feeling stressed
Right.
and inconvenienced.
So don't get defensive or try to shift the blame.
No, you want to meet them where they are emotionally,
Yeah, okay.
and then I would be transparent about the reasons for the delay
Right.
and outline the steps I'm taking to get things back on track.
So it's that combination of empathy and action.
I love that.
You're acknowledging their feelings,
Yes.
but you're also showing that you're taking ownership
Exactly.
and working towards a
I
solution
love it.
and making sure you're communicating clearly
Yes.
without using a bunch of jargon
No jargon.
that they won't understand.
Right, because that just adds to the frustration.
Okay, but what about those situations
Ooh, yes.
where the client's being unreasonable
It happens.
or they're demanding changes that are outside the scope of the project?
That's where those clear contracts
Yep.
and documentation that we talked about are so important.
Our best friend,
You can gently remind them of the agreed upon scope
right?
and explain how those changes would impact the timeline and budget.
So we have that roadmap to refer back to.
Exactly.
But sometimes even with the best documentation,
Yeah.
things can get a little heated.
So how do we de-escalate a tense situation?
Active listening is your superpower in those moments.
Okay.
Let the client express their frustration,
Mm-hmm.
resist the urge to interrupt,
Right.
and really try to understand their perspective.
It's like taking a deep breath
Yes.
and choosing to respond instead of react.
I love that.
But how do we find that balance between being empathetic but also assertive,
Right.
especially when we need to hold firm on something?
It's a delicate dance.
It is.
One technique that I find helpful is to use I statements
Okay.
to express your perspective without placing blame.
So for example,
Instead of saying you're being unreasonable,
yeah.
you could say, I understand you're frustrated, and I want to find a solution that works for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
However, making that change would require, a significant adjustment to the timeline and budget
Right.
as outlined in our contract.
So you're being firm but fair.
Exactly.
Respectful but also clear about your boundaries.
Yes, and you're not backing down.
But you're also not, attacking them.
This has been so insightful. I'm starting to see communication as not just a task, but like an art form.
It is.
It's a way to build bridges,
Absolutely.
solve problems, create a more positive experience for everyone.
And when you approach it that way, it becomes less of a chore.
It does.
And more of like a fulfilling part of your job.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big picture stuff.
Yes.
But in the next part of our deep dive,
we're
going to get into some more specific scenarios.
Yes, we're going to put all of this into practice.
The contractors often face.
And see how these communication principles can actually be applied in those real-world situations.
So stay tuned. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into contractor communication.
Ready to tackle some real-world scenarios?
I am. Bring them on.
All right, so let's imagine you're facing a project delay due to a material shortage.
This is every contractor's nightmare.
It's a tough one.
So how do you break the news to your client?
Yeah, what's your approach?
Well, I think honesty is always the best policy.
Definitely.
So I wouldn't try to sugarcoat it. I would just explain the situation.
Okay.
Really clearly and emphasize that it's outside of my control.
Right.
But that I am on top of it.
So you're taking ownership even though it's not your fault?
Exactly.
I like that.
Transparency is key.
Yes.
And I would also explain the steps that I'm taking to get things back on track.
Okay.
Like researching alternative suppliers or maybe adjusting the schedule to minimize the impact.
So you're already thinking about solutions?
Yep. And of course, I would provide a revised timeline.
Okay.
Being upfront about the potential delay.
So you're managing expectations right from the start.
Exactly. Communication is key.
Okay, let's flip the script.
Okay.
Now you're dealing with a client who's constantly changing their mind.
Oh boy.
About design choices.
The dreaded scope creep.
Scope creep central.
How do we handle that?
That's a tough one for sure.
It is, but I think you got to start by gently reminding them.
Okay.
Of the original scope of work.
Right.
Refer back to the contract.
Yes.
And explain how these changes impact the timeline and budget.
Because it always does.
Always.
Those detailed contracts we talked about earlier.
Yes.
They're your best friend in these situations.
They really are. And I'd also try to understand why they keep changing their mind.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, are they feeling overwhelmed? Maybe there are some needs that they haven't clearly communicated.
You're putting on that active listening hat again.
Gotta do it.
Sometimes those design changes are just a symptom of something deeper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by really listening carefully and asking the right questions, I can often guide them towards solutions that, still align with their vision, but also stay within the project parameters.
So you're being a partner.
Yeah.
Not just a contractor.
Exactly. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about internal communication.
Okay.
With your crew on the job site.
This is so important.
It's like conducting an orchestra.
Ooh, I like that.
Everyone needs to be in sync to create that beautiful symphony.
Or a beautiful kitchen renovation.
Exactly, or a bathroom, whatever it may be.
So how do you make sure everyone's playing the right notes?
Clear communication is essential.
Okay.
Make sure those instructions are clear, concise, and easy to understand.
Right, because not everyone communicates the same way.
Exactly. Some crew members might need those step-by-step explanations, while others might grasp things visually, with diagrams or sketches.
It's about tailoring your approach.
Right. And also creating a culture of open communication.
Yes.
Where crew members feel comfortable asking questions.
Absolutely.
Sharing their ideas.
It's a two-way street.
It is. And I think regular check-ins are important.
Yeah.
Not just about tasks, but also about their well-being,
Right, making sure everyone feels heard.
Exactly. How are they doing? Are they happy?
And that builds a strong team dynamic.
It does. And those quick huddles.
Oh, yes.
At the start of each day.
Love that.
Those are like the pre-game pep talks.
Get everyone motivated.
But let's be real. Sometimes conflicts happen.
Of course.
Even with the best intentions. So how do we handle those disagreements professionally and effectively?
All right, so first things first.
Okay.
You want to address the issue directly but privately.
Okay.
Avoid those public confrontations.
So no yelling matches on the job site?
No yelling matches, please.
Okay, good to know.
Encourage open and respectful dialogue.
Right.
But really focus on the issue at hand.
Okay.
Don't make it personal.
So separate the problem from the person.
Exactly. And if you can't reach a resolution on your own, Sometimes it's helpful to bring in a neutral third party to mediate.
Ooh, that's a good tip.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a fresh perspective.
Wow, we have covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
It's incredible how communication really touches every single aspect of a contractor's work.
It really does.
From client relationships to team dynamics to problem solving to conflict resolution.
It's the thread that ties it all together.
And as we wrap up, I really want to emphasize that effective communication is not just about mastering, these techniques.
Right.
It's about cultivating a mindset.
Absolutely.
Of empathy, transparency, and a genuine desire to connect with the people you work with.
So well said.
It's about building those bridges of understanding.
Yes.
That lead to smoother projects, happier clients, and ultimately a more fulfilling career.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So keep honing those communication skills.
Yes.
Embrace those technologies that can help you.
Absolutely.
But never underestimate the power of that human connection.
Very true.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back with more insightful deep dives soon. Until then, keep those communication channels open.
Yes.
And those projects running smoothly.
See you next time.